Guys, today we're going to be going over the test review packet that I made, and it's about 36 questions, and I'm going to go through every single one of them today, so hold right on. So our first question is, in Stone v. Graham, the United States Supreme Court decided 5-4 that Kentucky schools posting of the 10 Commandments on a wall in every public classroom violated the First Amendment's Establishment Clause. Wait, hold on a second. This sounds very similar to something we've seen before. Posting of the 10 Commandments in every wall. That sounds awfully similar to something that we know, doesn't it? Yeah, if you know what I'm thinking about, and if I know what you're thinking about, we know it's the Engel v. Vitale case. Also because it says the Establishment Clause. Basically, if we didn't know that, we could rule it out, saying that Hamdi versus Rumsfeld didn't really have anything to do with the Establishment Clause, so it's not Hamdi. And then it's not Wisconsin v. Yoder because that was the Free Exercise Clause, not the Establishment Clause. And Campbell v. Connecticut, it's not really related to this thing, so that's wrong. And there we have it. Engel v. Vitale is the correct answer. A new Democratic president has been elected in 2028. That's me. The president wishes to use their bully pulpit to persuade Congress to make a bill about environmental standards. What would be the most conventional method in recent times? So if you don't know, in recent times, social media has been the biggest impact on these presidential elections. Stuff like that. So a speech at UNESCO doesn't really correspond with anything, so we could basically rule that out. Creation of a president's news station to promote information regarding the president's views. That I think that should be illegal, so that's not right. Use of social media, it could be that. Sending telegrams, okay, yeah. I made this on purpose because if you guys are smart, you would know that we don't use telegrams anymore. Use of social media to connect with the views of people on environmental standards. That's correct. Okay, I'm not going to read through all of this, but basically it tells you that it's the unjust treatment of Negroes in the notorious reality. These are hard, brutal, and unbelievable facts, etc., etc. So we know it's some black movement rights leader, so we can immediately take off Smith's chase towards freedom because that's not even real, and George Washington's farewell address. And we're left with these two giants. And then we know that it's going to be MLK Jr.'s letter from Birmingham jail because that's what it is, because Malcolm X's Sinful World speech is fake. I made that up. So that is possible that the AP government test, I hope they don't make stuff up, but if they do, then there's no way of knowing, right? So you should know the correct answer, and they would only ask you about your foundational documents. Moving on to number 4, according to the graph below, which of the following is correct regarding church attendance between 1980 and 1990? So I give you 1980 and 1990, so there's no need to look here or here, so just forget about that. Just this part. Between 1980 and 1990, more people attended church monthly than yearly. Okay, so what is the monthly thing we have here? Monthly we have in this period is below like 20%, but yeah, this is 20%, correct? And then we have yearly, so that is also there. And then we have B. Between 1980 and 1990, 30% of people rarely or weekly attended church. Okay, we see 30% rarely, weekly. So in this time, okay, that combined is like 60% by itself. So there is no way that it could be that. And then moving on to our next one, between 1980 1990, 70% of people rarely attended church. So yeah, still below the 40%, so that cannot be right. And then we have between 1980 and 1990, monthly and yearly church attendance was counted to be in the same quantity across demographics. So there's nothing about demographics. There's nothing about the same in quantity. So this is wrong. That means A is our correct answer. Which branch is most responsive to public opinion? This should be a basic knowledge if you took the AP government course. If you at least listened to what your teacher was saying, at least you were present in the class, you should know that it's the legislative branch. Because by process of elimination, the first thing you should be eliminating is a bureaucracy. It's not a branch. It's under the executive branch. And then we rule out the judicial branch because it's meant to be the least responsive to public opinion. That's why it's not affected by the public at all. And then the executive branch doesn't really correspond with any type of public opinion, so executive branch is wrong. Which of the following is an example of de facto discrimination? So de facto discrimination is something that is discrimination that is not based on law. It's not a form of law. That is called de jure. Spelled like this. It's called de jure discrimination. That is what is discrimination in laws. So that automatically rules out Plessy versus Ferguson and Shaw v. Reno because they both are cases, and yeah. And then we're left with these two. And then we find that grandfather clause was a law, so that's not what de facto discrimination is. So that leaves us with our white flight, because that was discrimination of the white people who left their neighborhoods afraid of going to the same public school as black people. And then number 7, which amendment protects against unwarranted search and seizure? The 5th Amendment is against self-incrimination, etc., so it cannot be the 5th Amendment. The 6th Amendment is like the accused's right, so that's wrong. The 3rd Amendment is quartering soldiers, so it doesn't even have to do with unwarranted search and seizure, so it's the 4th Amendment, which says that unwarranted search and seizures are illegal. Which of the following best reflects the function of the Supreme Court in Article 3 of the Constitution? So, out of these 4, which of them are stated in Article 3? So the first one, to interpret the constitutionality of the laws passed in Congress. So as we know, as you should know, we learned that from Marbury v. Madison that the Supreme Court gave itself the power of judicial review to interpret constitutionality, so that's wrong. To adjudicate disputes between the president and Congress. Okay, yeah, that's not even true. That's nothing. Nobody can do that. To overturn legislation passed by state legislators. That's not true. This can be overturned if it reaches the court, but that's not a power. So our answer is to serve as the highest court of appeals, because it is stated in Article 3 that the Supreme Court is the functioning highest court of appeals in the United States of America. Number 9, in McCulloch v. Maryland. Okay, so this is important. McCulloch v. Maryland. Important. Which two provisions in the Constitution were upheld and strengthened? Congress's power to regulate commerce and its power to levy taxes. So, no. The necessary and proper clause and the supremacy clause. Well, that could be true, because if you know your cases, McCulloch v. Maryland gave the federal power the ability to create a national bank and restricted states' powers. So that could be true. And then the First and 10th Amendments, we should know that it doesn't relate to any the First or the 10th Amendments. The congressional authorities to create treaties and declare war. That's just straight up wrong. So it is B. Moving on, which of the following is the best example of 2 points of an iron triangle at work? So you should know that an iron triangle, okay, an iron triangle looks like this. And then we can move these around, but basically interest groups, committees, and bureaucratic agencies. Yeah, this is a terrible diagram, but you get what it means, right? So a White House staffer talks to a journalist about a particular federal program. Okay, that's wrong. Yeah, that is also wrong. Wrong color. It's not A. An FBI director testifies before a House committee on federal arrests, prosecutions. Okay, that's 2 of them right there. Bureaucracy, committee. That could be true. An academic researcher asks a magazine to publish her findings on pollution. So that's not even related to the iron triangle. And a senator meets with the president. That's not in the thing. So that's not in the iron triangle. So that's wrong. So our answer is B. Gideon v. Wainwright was a landmark Supreme case that selectively incorporated which amendment? So we're looking for the amendment that deals with counsel for accused people. So counsel as in lawyers for criminals to have a fair and just trial. So it's not the 5th Amendment. That's against self-incrimination. It's not the 5th Amendment. It's not the 3rd Amendment because it doesn't have to do with soldier quartering. It's not the 4th Amendment because it's not unwarranted search or seizure. So it is C, the 6th Amendment, because that's the amendment that talks about counsel. 12. Executive Order 11246, based on Executive Order 10925, and following the Civil Rights Act of 1964 which secluded groups' rights to be fairly treated under government employment. Okay, this was meant to be a very difficult question on purpose, because I added the extra bit and following the Civil Rights Act of 1964, because that is basically unnecessary information. Just exclude that. Now, if we look at 11246 and 10925, those are about women's rights. If you know them, they're about women's rights. So the secluded group is the group of women that were discriminated against. It's none of these other groups. Identify the correct statement about the right to privacy. The right to privacy is an explicit right that laws cannot infringe upon. Okay. Basically, explicit means it's explicitly stated. It's not in the Constitution. So basically you can rule out A and D because D talks about the explicit right again. So just because the sentences are looking very long does not mean that that's the right answer all the time. Now we go to B and C. The right to privacy is an implicit right the government must have in hands-off approach while dealing with contraceptives and abortions. That the state government cannot bend federal orders relating to abortions. Okay. this has to be incorporated to be true, so it's not C, which automatically makes B the correct answer. Title 4 of the Civil Rights Act of 1972 supported which core American value? So, you don't even need the Title 4. You could just assume that based on the Civil Rights Act, it's the equality of opportunity, because that's what the entire Civil Rights Act was, giving everybody the equal opportunity that they deserved. Yeah, so equal. Moving on, which of the following is an example of a constitutional check against the bureaucracy? So, the president fires and replaces heads of departments or agencies. That could be true. The Congress overrides a bureaucratic ruling. Okay, yeah. Bureaucratic authority does not include ruling. It includes rulemaking, not ruling. Congress vetoes to reduce a bureaucratic agency's budget. Okay, they cannot do that. That's not true. They don't vote. The committee votes, not the Congress itself. The president overturns a regulatory agency ruling in a signing statement. You cannot do that. So that automatically makes A your correct answer. A law to decrease Medicare costs from government spending would be aligned with which political party? Okay, basically it says decrease Medicare costs. And we know this is a Republican thing because they wish to have less government involvement. So they would support this type of thing. So your answer is going to be Republican. Two citizens are arguing over the role of influence, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so we're looking for what the second citizen believes. So I'll just read that part. The second suggests that since there are so many groups looking to influence policy in so many different perspectives, these competing groups will bring more acceptable policies. Okay, if it says many groups, basically just assume it's a pluralist democracy. That's what pluralist democracy is. It's basically a bunch of groups coming together. Alright guys, let me take a break. I need some water. And then now moving on. 18. Due to Supreme Court rulings, public schools can no longer conduct morning prayer. The court has established these policies through which process? Selective incorporation. Basically, because that's the only way that the court could establish these policies to states. A member of the president's cabinet disagrees strongly with the president on how executive branch policy should be carried out and has publicly expressed those views. Which of the following outcomes will likely happen? Will reassign the official? No. The president will have the remainder of the cabinet vote? No, they don't need to do that. The president will remove the official from his or her administration? Yes, that is the right answer. They will just remove them because they have the authority to remove them. Which of the following statements is an accurate interpretation of the law on obscene speech in America? So, governments cannot outlaw obscene materials as long as it has a warning label. No, they still can. Governments cannot limit speech and therefore cannot ban obscene speech. No, not necessarily. The restrictions on obscene speech are uniform throughout the United States. That is not true either. States have their own choice in doing that. So that's C. Speech to be obscene is not protected unless it can meet the established standards of value. Which of the following actions may Congress take to limit the president's power? So we're trying to see what action Congress can do to limit the power. So they cannot refuse to spend the money. They cannot name new cabinet secretaries, and they cannot raise taxes on the president's supporters. That's illegal. So it's B. They can easily override a presidential veto. Not easily, but they could technically override a presidential veto with a 2/3 vote. Which of the following is an accurate statement about necessary and proper clause? Allowed Congress to bar guns? No. There was proof that they couldn't use that. Overrule Supreme Court decisions? No. You cannot overrule Supreme Court decisions. Empowered Congress to act in a flexible manner to carry out its express powers. That could be true. Clause has mainly been used to return authority to the states. Okay, yeah, no. These clauses were meant to create more power for the federal government. Which of the following best describes Congress's use of the Commerce Clause over time? Congress has denied much of its commercial regulatory authority by Supreme Court rulings. No. Well, it has been, but not much of it. Congress can legislate only on products that cross state lines. No. They can do international as well. Congress has used its commerce power sparingly, and there are few federal commercial laws. No, there are actually multiple, as in dozens. So it is A. Congress has used to protect workers and the environment. How can public opinion polling affect political participation? Random samples leave too many people out of the poll. Sure, could be something, but not necessarily, because then they give you, if it were a credible poll, the amount of sampling error, so that's not true. Confirmation bias makes people vote for a candidate whose policies align with their own. I mean, not necessarily, does it? It predicts results so accurately. Okay, yeah, that's where we need to stop. It's not that accurate actually. So it's not D. And it's B because it contributes to horse race journalism. So voters don't engage with the real issues. They force upon other issues. The other hotly debated ones. Which of the following groupings constitutes an iron triangle? Executive agency, congressional committee, interest group, president, House Majority Leader, Senate Majority Leader. President, okay, yeah, it's like we were saying, it does not include the president. In one of the previous questions, we said that it doesn't include that. And interest group, Senate Majority Leader, so no. Executive Department, House Majority Leader, President, no. So it is A because executive agency connects with congressional committee, which is connected to the interest group. 26. Which of the following is true regarding the public's perception of Congress? Public perception of Congress. A House member's individual approval rating is usually higher than. That's not public perception. Most Americans see Congress as hardworking, ethical, and responsive to people need to know. They actually think it's very slow and not really up to Congress. Okay, yeah, approval rating is not really with the public perception, so it is D because the public appreciates the bipartisan spirit in Congress that brings people together. So the following best describes a frequent source of contention between the executive branch and the legislative branch. Basically, laws of humanity. Humans love money, so I will assume it is automatically B, determining the federal budget, because, humans. But it is true because the appointment of cabinet secretaries is not really much of contention except if this cabinet secretary were like, let's say, judiciary appointments, because that's when the real trouble comes in. So no, Homeland Security, that's not even under the legislative branch, that's under the executive branch, which is under maybe the oversight of the Homeland Security, under the oversight of the Homeland Security Committee, but not necessarily a frequent source of contention. And voter ID laws are like, not really. They're actually very important. A local police officer searched the person's car on a slight suspicion it happened to find the person possessed an illegal gun. The person never consented to a search, nor did the officer obtain a warrant. Which of the following might prevent the gun from being introduced as evidence in a trial? Okay, so it's not the Doctor Selector Incorporation. It's not stare decisis. And then it's not the failure to read Miranda rights. So it's the exclusionary rule that if there's a slight emergency or slight suspicion that this person's raising an emergency, then they have the ability to possess the illegal gun. Or finding the illegal gun, actually. Moving on, which of the following strategies might the president follow to receive greater support for Supreme Court nominees? So using public opinion polls. Okay, they don't do that. Nominating more women and minorities to the court. I mean, sure, but if they want support, they necessarily want support in the congressional areas, right? So they don't really care about that. Broadcasting party-supported television ads to influence senators. That would actually, like, make senators kind of mad. So it couldn't be that. So it has to be so that they're actually appeasing everyone. And naming ideologically moderate justices to the Supreme Court, so it's not one-sided. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but sometimes you can figure out what it means based on just who said it or where it came from, right? So we know it came from the I Have a Dream speech by Martin Luther King. So that tells us something, right? So this would lead to, and look at the timing. 1963, 1964. So it is B, because Martin Luther King was fighting for the Civil Rights Act of 1964, so it makes sense to choose it that way. Which of the following parts of the United States Constitution is incorporated to the states based on the ruling in McDonald v. Chicago? So, if you know your SCOTUS cases, which I hope you should, but if you don't, you should watch my video on detailing all of the SCOTUS cases required for the AP Government course. So, in that, we talked about the McDonald v. Chicago case relating to the Second Amendment. So, the amendment that every American citizen has the right to bear arms, and as you can see, right to bear arms. So D is your right answer. The Establishment Clause in the First Amendment does which of the following? Guarantees freedom of speech? No. Prevents prior restraint of press? No. Prohibits the setting up of a state religion? Yeah, that's the Establishment Clause. But I put this option just to make sure that you knew what you were doing. Prevents private and social religion establishment. Guys, this doesn't even make sense. What does this even mean? This doesn't mean anything. So this is wrong. Prohibits the setting up of a state religion. 33. Which of the following is a result of the Gideon V. Wainwright decision? Evidence acquired without a warrant will be excluded from the defendant's trial. That is not in the Gideon V. Wainwright decision, because that decision included the incorporation of the Sixth Amendment, where criminals have the right to a lawyer, and they cannot be denied that right. No state can prevent a woman from, yeah, that's not the right case. Police might tell that's Miranda v. Arizona. And so indigent or poor defendants should be provided defense attorneys. That is correct. Which of the following principles protects a citizen from imprisonment without the government taking certain prescribed steps? So it's not stare decisis because that's the wrong one. It's not selective incorporation because those B and D relate to the judiciary. And then, as you should already know, procedural and substantive due process, where substantive due process is the substance of the law, procedural due process is the procedure of the law. So the procedure is what it will save the citizen in the end. So the following is an accurate statement about congressional leaders, House Speaker, and Senate Whip have the same amount of power and influence. Maybe not, but we know the House Speaker is the most important, but the Senate Whip is just Senate Whip, so not really important. Not really correct. The Vice President regularly presides over and casts votes in the Senate. They cannot do that. Which leads us to B, because that talks about breaking a tie vote in the Senate. That is our correct answer, because that's what Vice President does. They come in and break a tie vote. And our last question, an interest group's political action committee, so PAC, has donated to Representative Jones's campaign, yet Jones has signaled she opposes the proposed bill that the same interest groups favor. Which of the following actions is the interest group most likely to take? So A, create and air negative ads about Representative Jones. Well, not yet, because they still have to talk. If it said that they talked and she said no again, then they might take the action stated in A. File an amicus curiae brief. No, Representative Jones is not in court. She's not fighting a case. She's not in a case. Ask for the donation to be returned to the political action committee. You can't ask for it to be returned. That's just not possible. So it's not C. Ask to meet with the representative. This is what I said. They first have to take the steps to meet them first, so that they can explain and persuade her to vote otherwise. So it's D. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope this review packet really helped you, and do well on your test tomorrow, and I'll see you later. Bye.